The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus said to the 12, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly, I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Grace, peace, and hope be yours from the God who is faithful from generation to generation. Amen. In 1997, the contemporary Christian band Avalon wrote and published the song "Testify to Love." I'm going to read it to some of you today, or read some of it to you all today. And yes, you heard me correctly, read, not sing. Because ain't nobody want to hear that. The refrain, which can quickly become an earworm, sounds like, "For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love. I'll be a witness in the silences when words are not enough. With every breath that I take, I will give thanks to God above. For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love." It's a beautiful song, and it became an instant hit. It won several awards and was considered one of the top contemporary Christian songs of all time. But being only 4 at the time of its release in 1997, and you're welcome for feeling old with me saying that, I did not hear it first until at least a decade later. And I guess now is the time for a confession to all of you. I used to listen to contemporary Christian music from time to time. I think that phase came about because I attended the National Youth Gathering and other youth ongoing events. Anyway, I digress. I instantly fell in love with "Testify to Love," given its catchy nature and beautiful lyrics. I used to sing it loudly in my car when it would come across the radio. So perhaps it was a good thing back then that I didn't have a convertible and I was single. Later, in 2020, one of Avalon's lead singers and one of the original founders of the band, Michael Passons, revealed a bombshell in a podcast I was listening to. He shared that in 2003, he came out to his fellow band members as gay. At that time, he was given 2 impossible choices: begin conversion therapy or leave the band. Conversion therapy, if you don't already know, is not therapy at all. It's a horrific practice of attempting to change one's sexuality. Not only can it lead to depression and self-loathing, it's not unheard of someone who's gone through it to die by suicide, either during the practice or after. So Passons elected to leave the band. The reason why was never disclosed to fans. Unfortunately, we're all aware that Passons' experience is not unique. Beloved, the church has been really good at conditional welcoming. Women are welcomed, but not as clergy. People of color are welcomed, but don't talk about your experiences of racism. Indigenous people are welcomed, but only if you leave behind your cultures, traditions, and languages at the door. People with disabilities are welcomed, but it's just too inconvenient and expensive to make the changes necessary for full participation and accessibility. Those who wrestle with addiction are welcomed, but only after they get their lives together. Doubters are welcomed, but please don't ask too many questions and make the faithful uncomfortable. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender are welcome, but don't ask too many questions. And pronouns are just too hard. And definitely stay away from the kids. Friends, conditional welcomed through a stained glass window of a closet is not welcomed at all. Thankfully, we only need to look at today's gospel to see what true welcome looks like. Jesus says, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." And at first glance, when I read these words, they seemed, rather ordinary. But Matthew knows that Jesus is saying something far more profound than what is on the surface level, because Jesus always ties his very presence to the person who stands in front of each and every one of us. The stranger, the outsider, the one society diminishes, the one religion has pushed aside, the one everyone else has decided it is too much, too different, and too complicated. Throughout Matthew's gospel, Jesus has a habit of showing up precisely where the respectable least expect him. He eats with tax collectors and sinners. He touches lepers. He speaks with those considered unclean. He lifts up women whose voices have been ignored. He praises foreigners. He heals on the Sabbath. Again and again, Jesus crosses boundaries that everyone else insists are sacred. Not because he does not care about holiness, but because he understands holiness differently. For Jesus, holiness is not about building walls. It is about revealing God's presence. And God keeps showing up in the very people that everyone else has overlooked. That's why this text is so challenging. Because if welcoming means welcoming Jesus, then exclusion becomes much more than a social problem. It becomes a theological problem. If Christ is present in LGBTQ plus people, what happens when the church rejects them? If Christ is present in immigrants, what happens when the church turns them away? If Christ is present in indigenous communities, what happens when we erase their sacred stories? If Christ is present in people of color, what happens when the church does not challenge racism? If Christ is present with those living with disabilities, what happens when we make no room for them? If Christ is present in doubters, what happens when the church silences the questions? If Christ is present in the very people the church marginalizes, then every act of exclusion keeps Christ in the closet. And friends, we have some closet doors to break down. We must proclaim boldly, unapologetically, and without hesitation, "You belong here." We must proclaim boldly, unapologetically, and without hesitation, "You do not need to hide." We must proclaim boldly, unapologetically, and without hesitation, "You do not need to become someone else before you are loved." We must proclaim boldly, unapologetically, and without hesitation, "Let you and me become a we and an us." Friends, if we are not doing these things every moment of every day, then we should sit out the Pride Parade today. I want to turn once more, though, to Michael Passon's story. Despite everything, he did not disappear. Despite rejection, he did not stop singing. Despite exclusion, he did not stop believing. Earlier this year, more than 2 decades after being forced to leave Avalon, Michael Passon's re-release Testify to Love. Think about the beauty of that. The song that once accompanied his exclusion became a testimony to healing. The song survived. His faith survived. And most importantly, he survived. For so many LGBTQ plus folks, especially those who were told they could not be both queer and Christian, that re-release is more than nostalgia. It brought about resurrection. And the song once again blew up the charts. But more than that, it played in concert halls and gay bars for the first time. And it played every single day on my way into church in my car, at least this past week. So my apologies if you drove by and I was belting out my singing, but I will not be silent, friends. And there was pushback about this re-release. Sure, there always is. But once someone has found liberation, true liberation, there's never, ever going back. University Lutheran, my beloved congregation, when we testify to love, we make clear that the church does not get the final word. When we testify to love, we make clear that shame does not get the final word. When we testify to love, we make clear that fear does not get the final word. When we testify to love, we make clear that God and God alone gets the final word. And God's final word is always love. That's why pride matters. Pride is what happens when people who have been told to be ashamed discover instead that they are beloved. Pride is what happens when the hidden step into the light. Pride is what happens when people stop apologizing for the image of God within them. Pride is what happens when the welcome of Jesus becomes real for every single person, whoever they might have been, whoever they are, and whoever they will be. All the colors of the rainbow, all the voices of the wind, every dream that reaches out, every word of story, every word of every story, every star in every sky, every corner of creation lives to testify. Amen.